Welcome to A Day in the Life. My name is Thomas Galloway. Today's guest is John Haila, Mayor of Ames, Iowa. We spent time talking about his background starting an architecture firm, as well as other steps that led him to where he is today. I really enjoyed this interview. We started talking about things that you might not expect from an interview with a person in politics. We were talking about life and how to find fulfillment in our jobs, in our community, and in family life. I felt like we could have talked about this stuff for another 45 minutes. If you enjoyed this interview, please subscribe and share with a friend. If you're interested in law or politics, check out the Galloway Law Podcast as well. And now, to the interview. I'd like to start just by going through your career path, starting with your education here at Iowa State.
How long do we have? 2-3 hours?
3 hours is all we want. Yeah.
I actually went to junior high and high school in Southern California.
Okay.
And I was headed to go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo to study architecture.
Okay.
And that was back in 70, 71. And my dad ended up getting a job in Des Moines.
Okay.
And so our family was going to move out here after I graduated from high school.
Right.
And I didn't want to be in California, my family being here in Iowa.
Right.
So he said, hey, I think there's a university here in Iowa. Funny story, I thought that all the corn that was grown in Iowa was sweet corn, I thought, man, how can you, anyway. So
Eat it all.
anyway, so ended up applying to Iowa State, got accepted in the architecture program. That was in 1972, and then graduated in back then we were on quarter system, not on the semester system.
Right.
And graduated in the fall quarter of 76. It was actually took me a little longer to get through the architecture program.
Right.
So anyway, I ended up getting a job in Des Moines working for an architect.
Okay.
And I met my wife at Iowa State. Ended up getting married in 77. She had a job in Boone.
That's all good.
Had a job in Boone. And we were the proverbial one car, two jobs.
Right.
So fast forward, I ended up getting a job in Boone a year later with a guy that had a degree in architectural engineering.
Okay.
Worked for him for 9 years, and then he announced one day in 1985, you can either buy me out or find a different job, but I'm retiring in March of 86.
Right.
So I got a lot of counsel from people that I respected that had a lot of wisdom. Weighted it heavily. Never had aspired to own my own company.
Okay.
But it kind of intrigued me, and business, fortunately, kind of came naturally to me.
Right.
And so I started my own company in architecture and engineering in 1986 over in Boone. And my wife and I both were very involved and active in the Ames community. Even though we lived in Boone, we were involved with the faith community here, had lots of friends from college. I think as people will probably find out, the friends you make in college and very shortly thereafter really become lifelong friends, and those connections are very strong.
Right.
So anyway, our company was growing in the early to mid 2000s, and then in 2009 we decided to move the company over to Ames.
Right.
Because we were growing. We needed more professional staff, wanted to grow our business, wanted to have an opportunity to work with Iowa State. So we actually moved our company September of 2009,
Okay.
hard to believe 9 years ago, to Campus Town. And we were intentionally moved to the Campus Town so that we could be close to the university. Campus Town was going to go through some redevelopment. And wanted to have the affordability, much like Kingland does for
Right.
computer programmers. We wanted to be close to campus to try and attract interns for our company. And so then we became a victim of redevelopment. Our company did. We were in the second floor of a bank building. We were actually located where 2320 is located now. And the building got sold, and we became an orphan. And fortunately, that was in 2012, I think, 2012, 2013.
Okay.
Well, 2013. And we thought, well, where do we want to go in Ames? And we ended up locating in the basement of the chamber. They had some empty space.
Gotcha.
And it gave us some time to kind of determine where we wanted to go. But we wanted to be in the downtown area.
Right.
So we were able to find a building in downtown and remodeled that and moved in. Oh my gosh, it was over 3 years ago, I think. So anyway, so I grew the company from I started out with secretary and me to we had about 13, 14 people. But about 12, 13 years ago, I hired 3 guys and with the vision of mentoring them to become future business owners.
Right.
And in 2016, actually 2 years ago, last month, I sold the company to the next generation of leaders, and now I consult with them half-time, and that freed me up to consider serving the community in a different capacity. Right.
So as far as the architectural firm, was there a point that you, early on, you thought, like, this is not going to work? We're not going to make it.
Oh, early on, or actually through the whole process?
Anytime.
Oh, I think that you talk to any small business owner, you're going to find that there's time. I joked a lot that I usually keep in my bottom drawer an application for being a bag boy at Fairway. I mean, there was times where it's just, you get stressed out. I mean, I have so much respect for people that are small business owners. It is the economic engine for our country, not just our community, but our country. And I believe that we employ the vast majority of employees. And you think about the Procter & Gamble's and the big companies, the Googles, the Apples, important, very important, companies. But they're not the heart and the soul of our country. It's the small business people. But it's yeah. I mean, I think that there's times where, did I ever think that I wasn't going to make it? No, because I know how hard I was working and just had this conviction that we could make it work. And if it didn't, then we'll have to find something else. Kind of a funny story is that. I got advice from my accountant and from my attorney before I started the company, and so I think it was 2 years in. We were doing our year-end financials, and I said, so how's it look? He says, well, I'll let you know in 5 to 7 years. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, most businesses do fail. Right. A huge majority of them fail in the first year, and then the next break point is like in years 2 or 3, and then it goes to. But I said, if a business can get through 7 years, like a business cycle, you'll be fine. So I thought, okay. So on year 7, I said, year 7, how am I looking? He says, well, I'll give it another year or 2. So it became a running joke. And then finally in year 10, I says, well, now what do you think? He says, I think you're going to make it. So anyway, but some of the hardest things to do as a small business person, I believe, one is hiring your first employee, because you're taking on somebody else. They're expecting a salary and pay, and you're not generating a whole lot of revenue, early on. So that's kind of, but after you get through that first hurdle, the second one's a little easier, the third one's a little easier, and all of a sudden you realize, I need staff. Right. And so you need to get used to that. But being a small business person, I'm very serious. You do everything from vacuuming the carpets to writing the paychecks, and the illusion that small business owners are able to take off whenever they want to. It's easy street is a true fallacy. When you're busy, you're just stressed and trying to figure out how you get your work done. And then if all of a sudden there's not as much work, you're scrambling to figure out how you're going to get work. And my wife always, she understood why, but would say, you're kind of slow at work. Just take a little bit of time off. And I say, honey, I got to find more work. And she knew it. And she was very supportive. And that's one thing you need to have, is a very supportive wife, partner, whatever it is. you need to have people that are very understanding. My wife and my two sons are very, very understanding and very supportive. And it took several decades before you finally get over the curve where you say, okay, now am I doing well, but I can start sharing a little bit of the you're building up some of the spoils. But it's a lot of work. It can be very fulfilling and rewarding, but also it's not for the faint of heart.
Right. Is there much element of marketing in that business as far as getting clients or getting projects?
Good question. Yeah, absolutely. If you want to grow a company, you have to market.
Right.
Frankly, that was probably the one thing I disliked the most was actually going out. Cold calls. I think maybe I got one job in 30 some years of getting. No, it's not. It's absolutely not fun. We were very fortunate. Over 90% of our work was repeat business. You just build the clientele. Word of mouth is, and certainly the best reference is always someone recommending you to somebody else, like a school superintendent or a satisfied client in a church or whatever. Because then the whole goal is to try and get in and not have to interview for a job.
Right.
You want to be the one selected ahead of time.
Right.
And we got a few jobs that we had a consultant recommend us to an owner, and then we came in on their coattails, and all of a sudden, then as time went on, we became the lead, because usually an architect is usually the lead in a project, and then they'll hire a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, civil, landscape, planning, kitchen consultants, and the like.
Right.
But obviously we kept always used that same consultant because they helped us get the job. They were able to continue serving the client as well too.
Right.
So.
On your portfolio, I saw a number of school buildings and school-related buildings.
Yep. Was
that a direct intention of your business, or it just kind of happened that way?
It was the latter. It kind of happened that way. I'd say a lot of firms in Iowa rely heavily on the K-12 market. Frankly, in the 2007 and 8, when we had the Great Recession, we were extremely fortunate. We only had one job, but it was a brand new high school for Ballard.
Right.
And that was one of the larger projects we ever took on. And so that kept us busy through most of 7 and into 8.
Right.
And able to keep, I think we had 6 full-time people at that time. Didn't have to lay anybody off, but we were able to keep busy. But the blessing was we didn't have any other work.
Right.
So we could dedicate our time on that and get it done. And then after we started coming out, then some of our school districts started coming through. People don't understand. Years ago, when the state adopted the 1 penny sales tax, which is called the School Infrastructure Local Option Tax, SILO, or now it's a different acronym. That helped a lot of contractors and helped a lot of design firms keep their head above water, because that was still money coming in and revenue, and consequently the school districts got some tremendous buys on their building projects.
Right.
We were budgeting like $24 million for this high school, and it came in at like $19 million. I mean, it's just I was trying to figure out how we can keep it under budget.
Right.
It came in like $5 million under budget. So I mean, they got a huge buy on it. So they benefited, and we certainly did too.
Right. One thing I've started to realize is just in any kind of project that the greatest moment of satisfaction isn't always like when you get it completed. Sometimes it's the early parts when you're like making a amount of progress. Was there what was your greatest moment of satisfaction in having your business? Was it finally feeling like you made it, so to speak, or was it like early on those first big steps?
Oh, in terms of business success, or in terms of the actual each individual project?
Just business success as a whole.
I'm a very relational person, and so from time to time to just sit back and look at the 10, 12, 14 people that are working,
Right.
with me as a team, and realizing that being able to build something that actually helps provide for the needs of their individual families,
Right.
that was very satisfying. I never was driven by money. I'm just not got to maximize profit.
Right.
So I measured our success as a company by, was a client satisfied? Did we deliver value to them? Did we bring the project in under budget? Did the people that use the building celebrate it and just say, wow, this just really elevates our experience?
Right.
Back to the Ballard High School. They were in a 1960s vintage building. They moved into this new one. The principal indicated that they had a hard time getting students to run for student government, to get involved in different clubs, move into the new building. All of a sudden, people are they're having elections with 5, 6, 8 people wanting to be class officers. It just
Right.
evoked this whole sense of school pride. That was very enriching and satisfying.
Right.
And so in terms of the actual business success, I never really sat back and thought, I finally have made it, or I just feel it's more or less the fact that able to provide for others and for our family, as well too. But it does come with quite a price. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of stress. I don't want to scare people away from doing it, because there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are very interested in
Right.
undertaking business, and I encourage them to do that. Probably the earlier in your life, the better, because then if something doesn't go well, you got a chance to rebound. But and it's finding something that you can do that people feel like they want to purchase.
Right.
Your services, provide them with something that they can't do on their own.
I saw the Redekers project in the portfolio as well. What was that like?
Well, that was interesting, because the owner had a set budget in mind, and actually when they first were looking at a different consultant, the budget was like almost double what they wanted to spend.
Right.
And they actually had a good relationship with the contractor, and some of our best references are actually contractors who we work with, because they like working with us and know we're going to be straight with them. We're not going to be their buddy, because we work for the owner, not for the contractor.
Right.
So it actually kind of we approached it more from a standpoint of working with. Finally, the owner did ask us to help them through the project, and then they started talking about, well, how are you going to deliver it? Are you going to get bids from multiple people or negotiate it with one company? And they kind of wanted both. They wanted to have the ability to get the lowest price, and they wanted multiple people bidding on it. And so anyway, we ended up calling in the contractor that they had a lot of trust for, and then they ended up saying that we did some initial designs. They said we can do it for what they wanted to spend.
Right.
And then it became a real excellent, team approach between the contractor and our office, working back and forth to come up with a project that stayed within the owner's budget. And then also the contractor was motivated. He wanted to keep. He started in the fall, I think it was. He wanted to keep his crews busy during the wintertime, so he was pushing to get the job done. Right. But it was a good partnership, and I think that from what I've heard, the owner's business has gone up significantly. As far as I'm concerned, as long as a client's business sees growth and success, then in my opinion the project's a success.
Right.
You don't want to design something and have them go out of business, or have a school kids not liking it or not being inspired by it.
Right. So I'd like to ask some questions about Cyride. When did they start planning the recent change they implemented?
Several years ago, we, as a board, were talking about how much our ridership had grown. It started out, it was, I forget exactly what it was, but it was pretty minuscule. And every year we kept on growing. And then we had 10,000 students come in over the last 10 years. Right. And so ridership skyrocketed up to almost 7 million rides a year. And I posed the question to the board. I said, it just seems like as you continue to grow, there's a business that grew significantly. You keep adding routes, and the question was there enough? Did we have the right mix of ridership and routes to serve the needs of the students, who are about 92% of the riders?
Right.
But also the community puts in about $1.5 million a year in taxes. I think it might have been $1.8 million this last go around, and certainly students pay quite a bit as well too. In fact, it's interesting that money comes from 5 different pots. Okay. It comes from the student government. It comes from Iowa State. It comes from the city. It comes from the federal government. It comes from the state DOT.
Okay.
So we have money coming from these different streams to make up about $11 million budget. So one of the concerns that I had was, are we actually, again, delivering value to our customers, the riders, and is there a way to try and get more services to people in the Ames community while still maintaining the excellent service that we have for the students? Mm-hmm. And so if we can actually get more streamlined in delivering service to students, maybe we could have some extra leftover to help the community. Right. So then we ended up hiring a consultant who spent, time flies by so fast. I think we spent close to a year working with them. Mm-hmm. And they stressed, and we understood, that when you adopt this plan, you just don't go out and start making those changes. Right. So it was actually, I think it was, 2.0 came on this year in earnest. So it was in 17. It was middle of last year, middle of 17, that we actually adopted the plan. So we actually started in 16 looking at it. Right. Worked with a consultant. They did pop-up events. They got a lot of public input. Right. And then adopted the new route structure, and then with the idea that it would roll out, and we rolled out some of the summer routes in May of 18, mm-hmm. with the idea being that doing the branding and the promotion for an August 1 launch. And then the other thing is that with SciRide, bus drivers bid every year on routes. Okay. So there's about 20 ballparkish, 20 full-time bus drivers, and the rest of them are part-time. And so those full-time drivers get an opportunity to bid on the routes, and then it's a seniority process. Okay. And that actually happens in, I think it starts in January. So a couple of months they'll be bidding on routes for late next year.
Interesting.
And then in March they finalize the routes, and then they have to go ahead and they publish them. Mm-hmm. So they print all that stuff. So there's quite a protracted process. So even though we adopted the final plan in sometime in mid-17, we knew it would take over a year to actually get the whole thing implemented and restructured. Plus, some of those drivers probably knew those routes by heart. They could probably drive them with their eyes closed. So you got some driver retraining as well too. So I'm pretty proud of that in terms of what the board did, and we did get a few more route services in Ames. Not as many as we hoped. What was interesting was that when the consultant came on board, we stressed that we wanted a peer review of SciRide with other bus systems that serve combination city and universities around the country. Right. Let us know, how are we doing? And he just raised his hands and he just said, "You don't understand." And we said, "We don't understand." He said, "You are the standard. We compare everybody in the nation to SciRide. We're that efficient."
That's really cool.
And so he said, "Frankly, we'll probably find some tweaks, but I'm not sure that we're going to find whole-scale changes that you're really screwing up on." And he was right. So we found we got some new express routes. Mm-hmm. We knew that the Southwest had grown so much. We wanted to get some better service into campus from there. And then there's some north-south express routes through campus that go down to Towers. Built that new turnaround by north side of Towers, and now buses just go up and down Welch. And that's because citizens didn't want Side buses going down Hayward or Lynn or Ash. They wanted to keep them, more down the main corridor. So it's really Side Ride's an amazing service, and we just don't understand how many staff it takes, and the biggest challenge is for Side Ride is finding bus drivers.
Right. How many part-time bus drivers are there? Do you know?
I know it's north of 100.
Okay.
I think that I have to. I've been away now for almost not quite a year, but for some reason I think that we're in 140 to 150 part-time bus drivers. I think we have 180 bus drivers.
Okay.
It gets so bad sometimes that actually Sherry Kairos, who is the department head, she runs Side Ride, will be out driving a bus at times. Wow. I mean, we'll actually have administrative staff out there driving buses because we don't have routes to fill. So and that was something that Warren Madden helped us out a lot on. What we did was, like, students that want to drive part-time for Side Ride have the ability to set their schedule before anybody else does.
Okay.
They got the registrar's office to give preferential scheduling for that. We've raised wages. You got signing bonuses. We're trying to keep up, but it seemed like a lot of students nowadays don't necessarily want to work during school, and that's their prerogative. And I'm not going to criticize them for that, or don't need to work for whatever reason. So that's kind of diminished the pool, it seems like, of bus drivers.
For the full-time drivers, how many routes do they typically do?
That's a question I'd have to refer you to Side Ride. I'll bet you could spend a whole podcast on Side Ride. It's a fascinating, the history of Side Ride and what they do. It's very intricate. I mean, it's like a giant three-dimensional chess game.
Right. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I'll have to spend time with her. Sherry do a great job. She'd be a fun person to talk to, and then she's got some great staff that would kind of help fill that in for you too. Mm-hmm. When did you decide that you wanted to do something in public service?
Well, actually, when we moved the business to Ames, I wanted to really give back to the community. Saw Ames as being a different community than the one that we had come from. Right. Not that the other one's a bad community, it's just has a different energy, vibe, vision. So I got involved with got on the Chamber of Commerce Board, helped reinvigorate Campus Town Action Association, served as president for a couple of years. Through that, was able to interact with Warren Madden, Steve Shanker, city manager, city council, asking for funding, talking about what's going on in Campus Town. And I was just energized by the commitment that the council had demonstrated to Main Street and then Campus Town, and served on a number of other local boards. And I just sensed with I feel like I have leadership skills, and frankly, running a small business, even though I don't run the city, I do. There are some parallels that are similar in terms of interacting with the public, working with, chairing meetings. I mean, I think I figured out that I must have chaired or ran well north of 2,000 meetings, during my career with school boards and church boards and counties, and I mean, just went on and on. So it's probably after a few years working with Campus Town Action Association that I started thinking, I might be interested in doing, being on city council. And then Mayor Campbell asked me to serve on the Side Ride board, and that really got me very much energized, seeing the city and the university working together. Right. And then a couple of years ago, I went to Manhattan, Kansas, with a peer city tour with the chamber, and city folks went down, saw the campus and the city and the county and Fort Riley and the school district and downtown and campus town all working together.
Right.
And I thought, this is the structure and the desires exist in Ames, and I wanted to be part of it. And I also was enthralled with the council members that were on council. I thought that they really wanted the best for the city. So initially I was thinking about running for city council, and I didn't sell the company in order to run for office.
Right.
It was just time to sell the company. When the fire in the belly is gone, then it's time that it wasn't going to help the next generation really be energized or excited. And when you're a sole proprietor for I think it's a little over 30 years, you can get worn out after a while. So Peter Rosum was a council member, professor of economics at Iowa State, and he and I talked a couple of times, and I thought, he was my ward council member.
Okay.
He said he was going to not run again in 2017, that he'd be done at the end of 2017. So I've been toying with the idea, and then I was talking to someone who actually was thinking about running for mayor, and long story short, a couple people invited me over for coffee at their house, and I thought that, and one of them was this guy who's going to run for mayor. I thought that he was going to say, I'm going to run for mayor, and I want you to run for council. And so when I came back from the meeting, my wife says, well, was it what you expected? And I said, well, you better sit down, honey. You want me to run for mayor. And the more I thought about it, and I talked to about 70 to 80 people over a 2.5 month time period, and just said, don't talk me into it, talk me out of it, but help me think through.
Right.
And it was unanimous. Everyone said you do a great job. Ames is poised at the point where you could really bring some beneficial skills and talents to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And so in mid-February, I started going to all the council meetings and listening. And the more I listened, the more energized I got, and I really liked what I saw. And I believe that. I believe that everyone has a moral obligation to give back to their community. I really do. And one of the things that I've been talking to a number of people at Iowa State and Iowa State leadership is how can we provide opportunities for students to experience what Ames has to offer on a community standpoint. Full disclosure, when I was on campus, back then, if you had any kind of a special gift, it was you had a gift of a vehicle. People did very few people had owned cars and brought them to school back in the early 70s. And usually if someone that did would have like 10 people pile into their car to go up to North Grand Mall and do some shopping or go someplace for church for sake of discussion. That wasn't close to campus.
Okay.
Lost my ball in the woods. Where was I going with this?
The main street, like a connection between downtown and campus town, or the
Sorry.
Okay.
I distracted myself.
So. It's been going a while.
Yeah, anyway. So I was going to wait. I waited until Mayor Campbell announced that she was not going to run. And I knew from talking to her, she was one of the persons I talked to, that she was not going to run. I would never run against her. I had too much respect. She was my mayor. She's the one that I really looked up to. And but she had served the community admirably. She was on council for 16 years, and then she was mayor for 12. So, I mean, she really put a lot of time in to get back to the community. So yeah, it's been a growing interest. All I know I said was I believe that all citizens have a moral responsibility and obligation to give back, and we want to have students have the opportunity to serve on boards and commissions. That's an opportunity. And we want to make it more visible, so we're starting to talk to Lawrence and Alex at the Daily about how can we try and get the word out more, what the opportunities are. We're going to meet with student government twice a year now versus once a year, so we're going to meet on the 14th of November with councils coming to meet with the Senate and just talk about. You want to talk about things that are positive and proactive, and not necessarily only meet if there's an issue that comes up. Essentially,
right?
But unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people are content to just take but not give back. On the flip side, the students that I've met really are interested in the community and they are interested in giving back. And my gosh, you have so many top-notch individuals. I met a number just serving on the SciRide board, and Juan Bilboni and I were on the board together. Had the highest respect for him. Met with Jillian and Juan for about an hour and a half a few weeks ago. Had a delightful time and just really got a lot of energy. Right. And they're great. They're really good leaders, and they got some really good vision for the campus. So you guys are in good hands there as well too. So. And I like networking with people. So the school district, Dr. Winterstein and I, and city manager, and Pam Elliott Kane, the vice president for business and finance, meet quarterly. Meet with the school district superintendent and board president quarterly. Just trying to start getting a feeling for what's going on in the community and how can we make people feel like they're welcome and part of the community.
Right.
Knowing that most probably won't stay in Ames. I mean, I wish everyone would, but they probably won't. I hope we can send forth leaders or future leaders, community leaders, to new communities where they get businesses. And I would say I have a richer, fuller life being involved in what's going on in the community. There's so many things going on, and honestly, if people say Ames is kind of a dead town or there's not a whole lot going on, if you really dig not too deep, you'll find there's stuff going on all the time. Now, maybe it's not always what you're interested in. I get that. Right.
It's how much you involve yourself too. If you dive into it, it'll be there.
Yeah. I also understand when you're going to school, you're paying, investing in yourself and education. Right. I get it. It takes a lot of time, and that's your highest priority. So I understand that, and you're building friendships and enjoying, life. So I'm not critical in any way, but it's something that I'm really. I have some ideas of ways to try and even improve the communication between student body and the city, so they feel like you're really, warm and welcome. Because we. Over half the population are students,
right? Yeah.
And city council. Yeah, there are 2 city council members, and the mayor are elected at large. So you represent every person. So I represent you, every individual, every student, and I want to be able to represent you, and what is of your interest. Now, doesn't mean that you're going to get everything you want.
Right.
I can't be Walmart, all things to all people. But I think there's opportunities to try and listen and engage.
How has what your expectation of the role of mayor being, has that changed since you started?
The expectation,
or what your role would be?
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty. I had a pretty good idea,
especially talking to
talking to a lot of people. Yeah. I met with all council members 3 times during the election process to understand what were important things to them. The first question I asked them was, "Are you interested in running?" If you are, I wasn't going to run against them because they, in a way, they kind of paid some of their dues. None of them were interested in running. I met with Mayor Campbell a number of times to just understand what the job entailed, talk to other people, in the city as well too. I had a pretty good handle on what was going to be required. Probably the biggest, people asked, what's been the most surprising thing is it takes a lot of time. There's no way that I personally could serve as mayor and own a business at the same time.
Right.
Something's going to suffer.
Right.
And it'd probably be the role of the mayor because the business is going to trump because that's got to be successful.
Yeah.
No, I do know there are some mayors in the Des Moines area that work full-time, and then they also work 20, 25 hours a week as mayor in addition, and but they don't have much of a life beyond that. I asked one guy who's works for a pretty prestigious law firm in Des Moines. He's mayor of Urbandale, I think it is. Yeah. Anyway, I said, "Do you work full-time?" He says, "Oh, yes." He said, how many hours a week do you put in as mayor? He said, oh, at least 20. I said, wow, do you have much time yourself? He said, no, my wife knows that I'm not at the office downtown Des Moines. I'm probably at the mayor's office, essentially. So, I mean, the disadvantage is there's a lot of things that do go on during the day. Do a radio show with Trent Rice at least 2 times a month. There's speaking engagements, there's different functions, there's meetings, even our time here. I mean that all it's hard to fit that all in at nights or weekends, and plus I have 2 sons. They both live here in town. I have 8 grandkids. My wife and I are actively involved in their lives, as well as a faith community, as well as other personal interests and activities. And so in order for me personally to balance all of that, it works best to work part-time I still consult half-time with the company I founded. And gives me just a little bit of free time, but I found a good balance that I'm comfortable with at this point in time.
Right. Yeah, that leads nicely into my last question, which is, do you have any general philosophy on how you handle the day-to-day routines, that certain things that makes you get in every single day or every single week? How do you balance everything, and just things you've learned over the years have helped you form a daily routine?
Well, you got to keep your priorities in mind. That's the first thing, is have clear in your own mind and some guiding principles. There's if you really are focusing on small businesses, I think you have to be prepared for the fact that probably your mistress is going to be your business. It's going to demand time. It's going to demand your attention. Sometimes in very inconvenient times, but I was also very committed to our family, and so being a small business did allow me to do a little bit of flexibility and some scheduling at times. So I was able to coach Little League, with my sons when they're spend time with them at nights and weekends. I didn't do a lot of traveling. I chose not to take jobs that were out of state, that required flying or whatever. I have some friends that work for national firms that they'll fly overseas and they won't see their families for at least a few days, if not a week or more, routinely in order to take care of projects. That comes with you're compromising something.
Right.
And then our faith community is really important, and then also my relationship with my wife as well too. So it's trying to keep that. It's a mental juggling act, and routine is helpful, as well. But there's been times where business would crowd out some other things, and my wife would have to sit me down and say, "This isn't working really well, and let's talk about this." I think that I also subscribe to the fact that it's important that we as individuals, there's 4 areas of our lives we need to focus on. One is individually, which would include your work. Then you have your family, then you have your community, and then you have your the world, essentially.
Right.
And people who concentrate on just one area or 2 areas, let's just say you become a world activist, you're really concerned about issues that are really important.
Right.
But you do that to the sacrifice of other things. There's been people that, maybe you're even aware of them, that have become very successful in business. They're divorced, their kids are renegades, whatever. To me, that's not a success. That's a failure on their part in the area of family.
Right.
They sacrifice that on the altar of work. So it's finding and understanding where can you make a difference, and that's probably why I'm partly fulfilled at this point, is that individually, family, community, global is a little harder to get your mind wrapped around it. I think that trying to do things that are sustainable, sensitive to the climate, things that are energy conservation, to trying to be good stewards of our resources is important. But that's the hardest one to kind of get your mind wrapped around it, essentially. So, but yeah, it's becoming disciplined and just saying, no, I'm not gonna spend 90 hours a week, working. And that's where it comes into hiring employees, is to try and hire enough people. And I was also very committed through my entire business career to saying, I don't want you as employees working 50, 60, 70 hours a week.
Right.
If you are, I'm going to send you home, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So they got used to the fact that, you might have some 45-hour weeks, or someone just worked from 7:30 to 5:30, 5 days a week, and they wanted to do that, Trying to avoid the evening meetings if you can. I paid the price, but then I also own the company.
Right.
And the successors are all of a sudden realizing it's not quite as easy as it looked. In fact, I think in the last few months they said, there's 3 of us. How'd you do all of this? I said, well, now you know why I was getting worn out. And it was just time to make a change. But it's if you asked me, and you didn't, but if you did, would you do it over again? I think so.
Yeah.
I would. Would I do some things differently? Possibly, but you have to be nimble and agile and flexible and realize. And that's the other thing, is that for those that are listening that are are potential entrepreneurs, is that there is an ebb and flow to business.
Right.
Businesses go through cycles. Right now, we're enjoying an amazing 9-year run on the stock market, and there's just a lot of positivity. And say what you want to about our current president. There's a lot we can say pro and con. He has engendered a lot of positivity in the marketplace, and people are believing in that. I don't agree with a lot of stuff he's doing. Mm-hmm. That's immaterial. The point is, that's helped propagate that. But it's not going to be forever. We're going to hit a recession. We're going to have some dips. We're going to hit a bear market. Our bear markets come in small businesses, and it's a sucker punch to the gut sometimes. And if you got time for one quick story,
go for it.
We were in a position where we had like 5 different jobs that we were going to get lined up, that I was going to say, I got to double my staff. And this was back in the early 90s, mid 90s. And in the course of 4 months, every job went in the tank. One was for the Chicago Northwestern Railroad, and Union Pacific bought them out, and boom, that one went away. School district decided they were not going to go for a bond issue. They're going to basically put it in mothballs for a while. That one went away. A bond issue for a courthouse renovation got put on hold because of a variety of things. So that one went away. And then there was a couple others. It wasn't just one day, but it was like every month. And I went from wondering how I'm going to staff all my projects to within 5 months laying off virtually everybody on my staff. And I was able to retain secretary part-time, and I think 1 or 2 other people half-time.
Wow.
And you talk about a sucker punch to the gut.
For sure.
That was my depression, and it went for and in the meantime my dad passed away.
Wow.
So
that's a lot.
Yeah, my mom was already gone, so I was actually executor of an estate on top of that.
Oh my goodness.
So pretty stressful time. But the point is that you learn from it, and through divine providence, a job came, and another job came, able to ramp back up.
Right.
But the biggest thing that was satisfying to me was every person who I had to lay off. One guy stopped on Friday, and he had another job on Monday, so he was gainfully employed. Another guy wanted to always go back and finish his master's, so he said, I'm going to take this opportunity to do that. So he went back to his master's and started his own company. Somebody else said, no, I want to go. I always wanted to move back to my hometown, so he got a job the next day. I paid $0 in unemployment. And my secretary said, I've always wanted to have the summer part-time off to be with my husband because he was working in a park. And then the last guy ended up, he worked part-time. He worked 3 days a week for a consultant of ours who was short on staffing. He wanted him, so he went and did CAD work for him, and then he worked 2 days. And so and by the end of the year, we got enough work that basically I was able to make myself whole financially.
Right.
And then we started growing again. So the point is, for your listeners, it's just encouraging is that you're probably going to hit some of those chasms. It's just going to happen. I mean, and it's beyond your control. I mean, if we had done all schools and I was all concentrated in one area, shame on me, you know. But it was just different pieces all over the board.
All came together.
That all just, you know.
In the worst way.
So persevere. Surround yourself with great people. Get some good mentors, some good counselors, and balance your life. That's really key.
Right. Yeah, well, thank you very much for taking the time today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for asking. It's been a joy talking with you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
All right.